Right, learning is right. The secret weapon, which will be revealed later. Okay. All of this is the DVSA speak. We're trying to give you all the insight to it. Afterwards, I'm going to give you the really simple way, and all of it will make sense. You know, when you put it together, suddenly you think it can't be that easy. We'll do it more. What have they got on learning and teaching strategies on that wonderful form then? What's the teaching style suited to the pupils' learning style and current ability? Okay. Was the pupil encouraged to analyse problems, take responsibility for the learning? Were opportunities and examples used to clarify learning outcomes or learning? Yeah. And was the technical information given comprehensive, accurate, and appropriate? I'll come to that one in a minute. All of them. Was the pupil given appropriate and timely feedback during the session? Seems very much similar to some before. Were the pupil queries followed up and answered? Did the trainer maintain an appropriate non-discriminating manner throughout the session? At the end of the session, was the pupil encouraged to reflect on their own performance? So they're the things it's got. Again, like before, we'll deal with them one. Right, now, let's have a little bit of a thing here, point to remember. Coaching, according to Sir John Whitmore. Sir John Whitmore was the late Sir John Whitmore. Unfortunately, he's dead now, but he was quite infamous in the driving world. You, Vince, may remind him of the crossing your hands steering saga. Some years ago, when driving instructors were all arguing that you must hold your steering at 10-2 and you must pull and push the steering wheel. And he was the guy that looked up and sort of said, why? And the DVSA later basically said, we have never, ever failed anybody for crossing their hands on the driving desk for the steering wheel. And loads of ADIs said, well, this is just preposterous. Of course, you must 10-2. You must pull and push the steering wheel, etc., etc. And for years, myself and others were saying, why? Etc., etc. Well, anyway, he was talking about coaching. He was a great educationalist, etc. And he said that coaching was designed for people with no knowledge of the subject that they were coaching. So basically, they are teaching people for subjects that they themselves have no knowledge of the subject. Now, you look at that and you can't get your head around that, first of all. Yeah, you can't. I think we need to remember, first of all, that we jump in far too early when we're teaching, all right, and tell our learner what to do, and we shouldn't be doing it. It's very easy, natural thing. Oh, no, you do it like this, Yeah, you don't go this fast, slow down now. No, do this. Okay. And we jump in too easy. And we've got to remember that, first of all, we almost need to pretend that we have no knowledge of what we're doing, first of all. How do I do this? Teacher. I don't know. What do you think? What would you like to do? I don't know. What do you think the answer would be? All right. Now, because we have knowledge in our subject, that's great. And again, then we can add it afterwards, okay? But we mustn't be jumping straight in. Thinking of coaching is, first of all, as if we have no prior knowledge of our subject. Back on the steering debate and things, it went on. It was a big old thing at the time, etc. I remember, and you, Vince, might have been part of this, I remember talking to big groups of people, and I did a thing on with the DIA when I used to be their chairman of their GPC. We talked about a load of people, and I said to them, how many people in this room, there were 100 people, teach learners to steer? About half the room put their hands up. Okay. Right, so what do the rest of you do then? Let them crash? And they go, no, we don't teach them steering. Now, half the room were being previously taught by me and whatever, so you don't teach. Right, okay then. You guys that teach people steering, what sort of problems do you get? Oh, all sorts. They can't steer. They're all over the place. They're crossing their hands. They're all sorts. They're all over. Really? Oh, God, it must be fun out there. And you guys that don't teach them steering, I said, what problems must you get? Sorry, none? None. Very occasionally get a problem with steering.
Best thing I ever did was stop teaching it.
Yeah, I've got to kind of thought you were. One of the ones I told Vince, stop teaching it. And what happened? What were the results? You occasionally get a problem. But the best thing is we actually caused problems, because what was happening is we were saying to them, right, you need to pull and push the steering wheel. Okay, so here you are, a learner, you're a novice, right? You're now looking at, you're going to turn left, right? But where's half of your brain? It's down here. Even if you're not looking at the wheel, half of your brain is here. and it's not looking out, and your focus is there, and we create the problem with swan necking and all sorts of problems, etc. Don't teach the steering wheel. It works. It just, suddenly it's like, so anyway, you go off and you say to these people, I want you to go off and I want you to, don't teach steering and give it a try and see what happens. When you rode a push bike, do you remember when you pushed a push bike? What did they tell you? When you turn left, you need to turn the handlebars 15 degrees. Nobody did they? Well, what about this, right? I put a lamppost in the middle of the room and you walk around it. Anybody going to tell you what angle you've got to turn your feet? You just know. And things that we intrinsically know, we know. And I'm using the steering as an example of so many things. They know how to do them. Occasionally, you have a problem. Occasionally. But nowhere near as much as we try and teach it. We actually taught people, we were teaching people problems. I remember having a learner who came to me and the dad said, well, good luck to her, mate, because she cannot steer at all. She's all over the road and everything. So we went out there and I took her and she went out there and her first turning left, she swan-necked out of it. And I said to him, what don't you do? Every time she came out of the road, her parents kept saying, watch for that car, watch out for that car, watch out for this. Of course, she's everywhere. No, forget all that, don't look at the car. Do you want to hit them? I want you to look at what you want to hit. Look at what you want to hit. So I don't want to hit anything. As you do, you want to hit the space between that car and that curb. So look at that space, and you get them looking further, and suddenly the steering. 99% of steering problems come from the eyes. I keep seeing it all the time on Facebook and all sorts. And the same thing, and I'm like, yeah. And then they start, oh, well, you need to do this, you need to do this. No, just tell them it comes from the eyes. Because once you get the eyes sorted where they're looking, all these problems disappear. They really do. So remember this, right? Coaching comes from a place of we don't know where we are. And initially, I want us to all to be thinking more, because I think this would really help with our lessons. If we stopped jumping straight in, and started thinking to your learner, well, I don't know, if you knew the answer, what would it be? I don't know, what would you like to do? Now, I think, oh no, not quite yet. Yeah, although else I've not, I said this, I think there is, and the moral of this, right, I've got a little exercise for you now. Yes. Here you go, here it is. Right. 6 plus 3 equals 9, yeah? Right, now on a bit of paper, I want you all to come up with as many different ways as you possibly can of making 9 using other maths. Okay, that'll do. That'll do the point. Right then. What you got? What you got up there then?
3 times 3.
3 times 3, yeah, what else?
3 squared, whatever you say.
3 squared, yeah. 11 minus 2, yeah. 90 divided by 10, yeah. 900 divided by 100, yeah. What you got, Vince?
Similar, 4 plus 5, 9 divided 10, 12 minus 3, 1 by 9.
He's in single-digit numbers mainly, don't know. Yeah. What you got, eh?
3 plus 3 plus 3, 1 plus 2 plus 3, plus 3, 8 plus 1, 6 plus 3.
And you got more ones as well, your different ones. Yeah. Which one's right? Absolutely every single one of them is correct. And we need to remember that when we're teaching as well. I see this all too often. A learner does something one way and the instructor says, oh yeah, but you should be doing it this way. If it achieves the thing. I did a session beginning of this week with somebody. This reminds me now. And he did something and he taught me something. We were doing reverse bay parking or something, and he taught me to do it. And I went, that works. Never seen it done that way before, but it works. I'll go with that. And that's happened before, a lot of times. People have got to keep an open mind. If it works, it works. And that. Even when I was working delivering the training courses for the police, okay, some of my colleagues were supposed to be really high qualified trainers, etc. But we would do things like we do, give us reasons for keeping you within the speed limit, for example. And 24 clients would give you lots of different reasons. And some will go, yeah, but what about these? And they'd go and give them a load more of their particular ones. Well, what are you then doing to those reasons that they've all given them? You've given me, what the clients have given you, what were you doing to them? You're always saying then, yeah, but mine are better than yours, or you dismiss them. Whereas if their pupil can give you a reason, or anything that's valid, then accept it, It doesn't matter. If it sounds great, it's theirs and it works, all right? It may not be your one, You know, sometimes you might give them another one, but generally accept it. If they give it to you, then the reason good. Learning will take place much better then. So if you ask, well, you know, what's that? You know, 6 plus 3 equals 9, or how that, and they give you something else, it doesn't matter. Right, I think that's a little bit of thing I added in there. Oh yeah, don't jump in too fast by telling. Let your pupil try and come up with their solution first, all right? That's what you're doing. Many of the teaching strategies we're going to see in a minute can be resolved by letting the student come up with it first. So what's the teaching style suited to the pupil's learning style and current ability? This is another easy one because the best way is ask your learner. How would you like to do this lesson? Would you like me to demonstrate it? Would you like a talk through, etc., etc.? You will know which method your learners tend to like in your lessons. Do not make the mistake of not doing this in the standards check or your part 3 check because, of course, the examiner will need to see it. You can't say afterwards, oh, but I know when I... Yeah, you need to make to do. So you're going to ask them, how would you like to do this today? What's your preferred method? You know that your learners, there are 4 basic learning styles out there. Read, write, visual, kinesthetic and auditory, yeah. You know that. So each learner learns differently, etc. There are ways you can do of working out which way your learner is, but generally just ask them which way they would prefer. Your visuals would like demonstrations, etc., and like to look at your book with the pretty pictures. Your auditory, they like to listen to you talk to them, etc. Your kinesthetics just like to get on with it and have a go. Yeah, and others liked demonstrations, etc. So they all have their preferred learning style, and it's a way of doing it. Okay, there. But we all have multiple learning styles, so you may need to try a different method if it doesn't work. Many years ago, I mean, you know, when I was taught, basically every lesson was you got there with a 20-minute briefing, you opened up a book and blah, 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 you know, looking at a pretty picture, and then you went and guided them, prompted them, and did it all independent, you see. And I used to struggle quite a lot with the roundabouts. I'd be like 3 or 4 lessons on roundabouts and I still couldn't get them. And eventually, in desperation, feeling quite lazy, I decided, I'm just going to demonstrate the roundabouts. Really bad of me, really, because the instructor, the pupil was paying me for my time and I was driving. Or so I thought. Did one lesson, I went off, did the roundabouts. As I approached them, I started asking the pupil, is it safe for me to go? And, yeah, they were great, fine. When do you want me to do my mirror and signal off? And they told me when the mirror and signal off. And I thought, well, that was really quite successful. And they jumped in the car and they did it, and they just did it. In a 20-minute session, they covered what they normally do in 3 or 4 lessons. And I thought, that's a bit strange, you know. So I started offering demonstrations more often. And then I realised, and then of course later on when I got into the teaching side more, and speaking to senior examiners, and they would be saying, we don't know why instructors don't demonstrate more. You know, certainly when we got involved with audit, one of the criticisms was that the audit trainers were not demonstrating, and they should demonstrate. And it's something about instructors that feel that demonstration is wrong, that the pupil's paying for the time. Well, what's the pupil actually paying for? Pupils are paying for you to teach them. And if demonstration suits that particular learner and it teaches them quicker, you know, we're actually doing it. So don't be afraid to demonstrate. It is a very powerful tool sometimes, but it doesn't suit everybody. You will get some that don't like it, don't want it, but they'll probably be different learners. So it is a matter of finding. You generally ask your student which method they like, what would they do. Even though you know every single time in normal lessons your learner says to you, can you just demonstrate it or whatever, on this test session, ask the question, and I'll show you where to ask it again. When we do the simple method, you'll know where to ask it, because you'll have a little chart thing to do. Was the pupil encouraged to analyse problems, take responsibility with their learning? That goes back to the coaching thing I said. Did you encourage the learner to come up with solutions, answers? Well, they encourage what could be the problems, etc. You know. Today we're going to do roundabouts, blah, blah, blah. How would you like me to teach roundabouts? Okay, you'd like me to just give you a word picture and draw them? Okay, fine. Share the responsibility. What problems are likely to happen today on roundabouts? What could go wrong? What could go right, you know? So even there, and we haven't even moved the car off yet, we've started to get them to analyse the problems, to think for themselves. And then again, when they've gone wrong, well, how could you do that better? What could you have done differently? If you did it again, what would you do? That was really, really good. I like that. That manoeuvre was fantastic. Yeah, lovely control. Observations were okay. If you were to do it again, how would you improve the observations? How could you? Could you make them better? What could have happened? What could have gone wrong? Yeah? Get them talking, and they will talk. If you've got rapport. You know, if you haven't got that rapport, it ain't going to happen. None of this will happen. So you need to have that. None of you are going to have problems with rapport. You're not. Yeah, this is, you know, I teach other subjects. I'm a qualified classroom teacher, and again, English as a second language as well. Rarely, there is no other real teaching. If you're a geography teacher or an English teacher or a history teacher, you don't get real examples ever to really teach pupils. You do from books. Okay, you can take them on day releases out to see the churches or whatever you do, you know, when we used to do them in school. Don't you? Can you remember that far back, Vince? But yeah, we went back, you know, we did all those things there. Driving, oh my Lord, just open the window. I mean, you know, they're out there all the time, learnings, outcomes, etc., etc. You know, again, I was out there doing a manoeuvre, etc., and I was talking to someone, you know, I said, well, you weren't using the things around you, etc., you know. I was role-playing, I was doing role-playing, I'm like, oh, why do I need to look? I only need to look out for cars, don't I? What do you need to look out for? Cars. Just cars, you know. I was really emphasising cars, that's all I need. I was in a supermarket, you know. And I said to him, well, you weren't really using... I mean, what about the old man that fell over on the right, you know? How could you have used that? Well, there's nothing to do with us. Yeah, but where was everybody looking when he fell over? Who was looking at us? Nobody. Yeah. What about the woman who walked down the side of a car on the mobile phone? You know, you made no mention of them. You know, the woman with the pushchair walking by. You know, the old couple walking along behind the car. You know, use them. Okay, you need to use them. When you see them, they are somebody sending you learning things to use. You know, and you need to use them all. Okay, because the examiner will be seeing them. Remember, he's got all the time on his hands sitting in the back. But again, you need it for your learner. So what sort of things we're going to look out for? You know, look out the window and you nearly always see them. You know, there's a road over to your right. How could that be a problem? You know, there's always something you know, there's always something. School children, something that they can use, you know, and use the learning things. I remember a Southampton check test, and the examiner did comment and said, you were moving off and stopping, and in front of you was a gentleman riding a push bike with 3 children on the bike, one on the handlebars, one in the basket, and one sitting on the crossbar, on the crossbar. As you moved off, you made no mention of this to your learner, and you know, and you were doing anticipation and things like this, you know, things like that, and no mention was made of the boy on the bike, you know. Oh yeah, well I was watching him. It's not your job to watch him. It's your job to watch the pupils watching him, you know. Are there anything you should be particularly aware of at this moment in time? You know, etc. And again, I was in the car park, you know, is there anything particular that we should be aware of? Well, there's a car over there. Okay, what about the pedestrians? What about them? Were they a problem for us? Well, they could be. Oh, yeah, I suppose so. You know, that man falling over. You just, you know, I don't mean you must mention them. I mean, you need to look around. There is always something. And in each situation when I've done this subject in a car, I've looked around and said, I can always find half a dozen to a dozen things that we could have mentioned. You know, there's always something. So you need to bring them up in the car. You know, use opportunities, use examples. They're out there, you know, wherever you can. Was the technical information, was it given accurate? My Lord, this is a massive big failure as well. How many times over the years? Right, here you go. Let's try this one then. You can't answer this one. How often should we check our rear view mirror? It's on Facebook a lot, this one. How often should you check your rear view mirror?
Quickest way to start an argument, this question.
As often as you feel you need to.
When you need to.
As often as you feel you need to.
Yeah, okay. What do you reckon? God, you're out there teaching at the moment. Yeah. Sorry, I'm putting everybody on the spot here, aren't I? Okay, what do you reckon?
5 seconds. I've read.
You've read every 5 seconds, have you?
Saw that on Facebook.
You saw that on Facebook every 5
It must be
seconds?
true. Like the sun.
Oh, like say every sort of 15, 20 seconds.
Every 5.
Depends on what type of road I'm travelling.
Yeah. So we could do with a sort of a chart really for different types of roads, for different types of things. That would be useful.
I would use it more to see what cars are
Okay.
behind me. But if I was on sort of my little street,
So every time something changes,
What does the highway code say?
speed, every time you change speed.
It says you should check it every time you change your speed, direction or overtake, but it says something about the timing. That would be a really useful one to know, wouldn't it? What does it say, Vince?
Effective observations.
How often?
As often as you need.
It doesn't say that, Vince. Don't let me down. It says the word frequently.
Frequently.
Okay. How often is frequently? You were somewhat describing that just now. Okay. In a sense, and you were there and that. And 5 seconds is just wrong. But, you know, but that's what I would get. Doing training years about that was 5 seconds, 6 seconds, something like that. And of course, then they go back and they go, the examiners, they failed my pupil, but my pupil was checking it every 5 seconds. Yeah. Trouble is, if you say to a pupil every 5 seconds, they do it. They go,
Like the counting or yeah.
1 over,
yeah,
2 over,
5 seconds, yeah.
And they look up at the mirror just a little already, so it's like,
you know. The point of this is we need to know what the highway code says really, because that is our ipso dipso fact, right? Whenever you're teaching any subject in education, right, educational rules, laws, so to speak, you must teach a empirical fact first, right? That is a known truth fact. So if I was teaching mirrors to a learner, I would be saying one of the first things is, according to the highway code, you should check your mirrors frequently. Discuss. Right? And your learners will say, what does frequently mean? So would you check it more on the motorway, or would you check it more on the roundabout? Would you check it there? Where would you do? Yeah? And your learners, they're not daft. They will have that conversation with you. Nobody is going to argue with you. No examiner is ever going to argue that that fact is wrong. Because, you know, let's face it, it's the DVSA, DSA, you know, highway code rules. Also, Driving Essential Skills is a really good book as well, because, of course, it was produced and supplied by the DVSA. Going on to things on Facebook where they say all these things, etc., etc. I mean, you know, when I was an instructor trainer and I was doing lots of rescue work, people would come to me and they would give me all sorts of rules. But my trainer told me this. Fine. My trainer told me 5 seconds. Absolutely, it's up to you. Yeah, but you're giving me something different. No, I'm not. I'm telling you to use what it says in the highway code. You can give to the examiner whatever you want. I really don't mind. You can give them 5 seconds, or you can give them what it says in the highway code of frequently. If you're a betting man, though, which one do you think the examiners are going to go with? Yeah, the highway code. I am never going to tell you anything. I'm just going to ask you what it says in the highway code. When you get a learner who looks up and says to you something like, how many car lengths should I keep behind the vehicle in front?
it's always 2.
Yeah.
Whenever you ask that question, I always get, 2 cars.
Yeah, well, it comes from something, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Because it is too...
Something else.
Chevrons on the motorway, isn't it?
We ain't got none of them down in Cornwall. You're all right up in Taunton, you got them, but we ain't got none of them down here, so I've got to drive all the way to Taunton now.
Say
innit?
2 tractors of power.
It depends on a lot of things, isn't it? What
Yeah.
you're following.
What's the highway
speed
code
you're
say?
travelling at.
What's the highway code say?
A safe distance. You know,
2 second rule.
2 second rule.
Yeah. See, gang. Yeah. Can you see why this is in there? When you are giving this, can you see the examiners here will hear things like, their learners will ask these questions and they hear people saying, well, it depends on your speed and all this lot. What's the examiner in the back thinking?
It's not what it says in the highway code.
Oh dear.
So you would just say, you tell me, what does it say?
You
in the highway
cannot
code?
be expected to know everything it says in the highway code, okay? Here is your get out of jail free card. First of all, it's a highway code in each door pocket,
Yeah.
okay? The one in the pupils one will be well thumbed. Your pupil says to me, how are, you know, blah, 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 and you go, where could you find that information? Okay? And quickly they open up the book and they look at it and they thumb it and they find it. Good. What does it say there? Well done. So what have you now taught them? You've taught them 2 things. 1, the answer to the question, and B, where to find it. When they pass their test, eventually, guess what? When they want to know the answer to a question, what are they going to do? I did a thing with a big group of people with this, and or various things, and I would do this thing, and I'd ask the first question, where could you find the answer to that one? And and eventually you go, it's all right, I know what the answer is. You get halfway around and they go, it's all right, they're already looking it up now, you know. Yeah, okay, etc., etc. Or, you know, when the classic one with the speed awareness course with the police, and somebody would look up, and some of my trainers didn't know the rules on goods vehicles and speed limits, etc. Hey, when did they change the law? 1964. Okay, so it was always the way, you know, and so they go, goods vehicles are complicated, aren't they? You know, I mean, is it a van? I mean, is a van, has it got to be sign writing and then you can break the speed limit? Or, but white man, but then small vans, no, it's not as easy. The highway code says a goods vehicle. Yeah, a goods vehicle. That's what it says. A goods vehicle, right? Now, we all know what a goods vehicle looks like, don't we? Like, the vehicle designed for the carriage of goods. Right? So a pickup truck designed for the carriage of goods. Yeah, a white van, a blue van, a yellow van, a green van, a silver van. Van designed for the carriage of goods. A lorry designed for the carriage of goods. It's not complicated. There are a couple of exemptions to the rule, providing that they low label isn't 2 ton, etc., and they're on a car-derived chassis, but you'll be fine there. But there were a lot of people who don't go. So they have all these questions, and I hear my trainers say this, and then people were going up and going, I've got a T5 van with such and such. Oh, I don't know what that one is. I've got a such and such van. And I go, was your vehicle designed for the carriage of goods? Yes. That's restricted then. Your vehicle? It's a such and such. Is your vehicle designed for the carriage of goods? Yes, it was. And your vehicle? It's all right, mate. I don't need to. Yeah. It's not difficult. Highway code. All right, stick with that. Make sure you're teaching that. If you don't know, then use that caveat. Get your learner to pick up the book and look from. You are teaching them twofold. 1, what the answer to their question is, and 2, how to find the answer in future, etc. And they...
Use as well if you don't know.
Sorry?
If you don't know yourself.
Yeah, etc. I would. I mean, I wouldn't even if I know, and the chances of me knowing are slim. Eh? It is not true that I recited the entire highway code and I know every rule in it. It is totally not true. Much. Etc., or Road Traffic Law 1964, 1988, 1987, Construction Use and Regulations Act thereof. It's really not true. But even if you know it, you don't want to immediately give it up. Remember, coaching comes from a place where you don't actually know at first. So you've got to give your learner the chance. You know, what do you think it would be? And two car lengths is a classic one. You know, well, that's all right. 2 car lengths. Well, up the motorway, my wife drives a smart car. You know, really? Well, it's 2 something, isn't it? Oh yeah, 2 chevrons is another classic one that comes up, etc., etc. But it is the 2-second rule. Yeah, things that, and there's millions of them. You know, absolutely loads of them out there. It must be comprehensive, appropriate, and it must be accurate. You know, you need to give them it there. Was the pupil given appropriate timely feedback during the session? Okay, so did you feed back the information to them timely? Okay, we're on approach to a roundabout here. You didn't check your mirrors, all right? Right, so they're there on the approach. They've done the mirror, they've done a signal, and you start going on about, you weren't checking your mirrors there. You really should have been checking your mirrors. Okay, now what mirrors are you going to be checking? Is it timely? No. No, you know, and this is what, was it timely? Was it appropriate at the time? Okay, so, you know, you hear this a lot. Mirrors are checked, okay, boom, boom, move on, etc. The other side of the roundabout, when the task demands are lower, then you can talk about it. You know, I see this as another problem. People get jumping in too soon and they're talking to them. And their roundabouts are complicated things. Your learner needs to be concentrating on these things, etc. And don't start talking to them then. I think it's quite a simple one, that one. I mean, again, a pretty simple one. Pupils. So your pupil's sitting at a set of traffic lights and the pupil asks you a question about something and you describe, actually, the task demands are do great here. I'm not going to talk about it now. You need to remember to answer them later on. This is difficult because the examiner's easy. He just writes it down. And you forget later on. You're not going to fail your whole test because you didn't follow up a question, but try and remember them. All right. I have a technique when I'm doing feedback at the end. I literally run through the routines. So I might ask, my feedback would be, let's imagine we were doing whatever it is, anyone we were proceeding along the road, you know. And I might say, right, what routines were we using today? What mirrors? What signal? What position? questions about speed, where were we looking? If we were doing any of the manoeuvres or something, I'd be asking them, okay, what routine were we using today? How do we do our preparation? What about our observations and that there? It would prompt me, and also suddenly it would prompt me into, oh, you had a question about manoeuvres, and you had a question about that earlier. Did you have any questions, etc.? You know, feedback again. It can send a minute. You know, yeah, but that's how I use it. Also gives me a chance of remembering questions that the pupil may have asked throughout. You know, again, you're not going to fail an entire test because you didn't do that. There. Did the trainer maintain an appropriate discriminating manner in a non-discriminating manner throughout the test? Okay. What does this mean? Obviously, we're not going to, you know, I was conversation with somebody at the moment who's dealing with a company in China, and the company looked up and said, you can supply us with any trainer you want as long as they're male, because we won't have female trainers in China. That's not actually strictly true. They will give the job to a female over a black person any day in China. And I remember being in China, and the school looked up and said to a group of 3 people, yes, we want you, but not you, you're black. There are signs in the doorways, in shop windows in China saying, we do not serve Japanese here. Anything goes in China. Right, we know about that sort of discrimination. But what else could be discriminating? White man van, that's a classic, that is, yeah. God, typical taxis, another one, yeah. We need to be careful of them, okay. White man van going around and that. And of course, nobody would ever be discriminating against cyclists, would they? Oh, sorry, my eyes diverted to Vince for a while then.
Not on a lesson.
Not on a lesson, no. I know we've had this conversation, but do you know in the law of this land, who has absolutely right of way on the public highway? The public highway being from one boundary across the pavement to the road and to the other boundary to the other pavement. Who has absolute right of way on the Queen's Highway? A pedestrian, yeah. Who has the second right of way? No. Horses, yeah. And who has the next right of way? Not cyclists, not yet. It's farm animals. Animals used to correctly herd them. So your dog, if it is a farm animal, yeah. And then comes the cyclist. The lowly car driver is way underneath. And they don't have the right. It's the way this law has always worked in this country. And do you know what? Cyclists do break the laws. Yeah, but so do motorists, all sorts, etc., etc. It's just one of those things. But we have a duty to look after them. They don't have to do tests, don't have to pay for a road fund licence. In fact, the road fund licence was originally to pay for the roads, for the damage that we would cause as a motorist, for the horses, the cyclists, and the aforementioned dog, sheep, goats, horses, and all that lot. Etc., etc. So, yeah. So, yeah, it's a sad rule, isn't it, really, for some people?
One way I do explain that to them, if they're, you know, complaining about cyclists, complaining about the horse and everything, I just say, well, who was on the road first?
Yeah, they were there first.
What do you mean? Oh, cars haven't been around forever. How did you used to get around? Walk, cycle.
Yeah. We have a duty. Look, I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, most people, as I say, let's be reasonable. If you knock a cyclist over, who is going to come off the worst? How are you going to feel if you killed somebody? You know? You know, you're not going to feel good. It's when will the pain go away? Never. You know, it never goes away. Somebody talk about that, you know. It's sometimes you have to get there. Some of the things when I was delivering the courses for the police, I mean, that was also a common thing, you know. Oh, but it's like this, you know, etc., etc. And you get there and you get to them sometimes. And how would you feel? You know. Yeah. You knock over and kill somebody because you're doing 35 and a 30. You know, appropriate, yeah. Thinking about things, etc., etc. All right. And I've seen this, so many things. Instructors do things that are not, they wouldn't consider to be inappropriate, and they are, etc. Comments made. Yeah, at the end, was the pupil encouraged? This is missing so many in lessons. Pupils aren't encouraged to reflect their performance. How did we do this? It's simple. It's the old feedback, you know. How did you think you did? How did you do today? You know, what could you have done differently? You know, what did you like about today? You need to give them feedback as well. Your feedback needs to be heavily positively biased, all right? Some of you remember an unfortunate term called a shit sandwich. Anyway, it's really wrong and it should never have been around. The trouble with that sandwich is you've got this really big, thick bread, you know, and this little bit in the middle, you did quite well, though. You know, so you did this, you did this, you did this. Oh. But you did this quite well. And then the rest of it is there, and it's heavily laden. And it really, as a guidelines, you should give your pupil 3 bits of good, positive stuff to 1 bit of bad. And one of the things I learned early on, and it worked really, really well, was to find something specific during a lesson that a learner does. There's always something very specific. And I used to jot it down when I first started learning. I remember this specific, now that's going to be my one thing. So at the end of the lesson, I really like the way you did blah, blah, blah. That was really, really good. Oh, really? Now, imagine your pupil now. Right, they're there, right, how did you do? I did. Oh, really? Their whole body language changes, yeah? And they're more receptive to you. And then you were doing that, doing that. Now, there was one thing, how would you change this? And what would you do about this? And you can talk to them. How do you feel the lesson went? You know, I still do it now when we do training with part 3 or anything. I always ask them, how do you think the lesson went? What would you change? What would you do differently? And sometimes there is nothing wrong with it. And that's what I want. You know, how would you do them? Nope, you know, I wouldn't change it either. Is the right answer. But do get them to reflect on their own performance. And remember, all of this is not just about the test. It's about doing this in real life. Because if you do this in real life, when you come to do your standards check, it's going to be second nature. You're not even going to think about it. A lot of people don't. They finish the session, right, okay, next week, same time, you know. Remember, you've got that 15 minutes at the end, right, where this is all done, right? Allow that 15 minutes. If your lesson ends at 2 o'clock, don't end up putting outside the pupil's house at 2 o'clock. Yeah, because you're going to be struggling, right? You need to be part of the lesson. If you got the right rapport and it's all going well, your pupils will be quite fine with that. They will expect it. They do it in normal lessons.